You ever have a moment where time slows down? Where everything in the room is still, so still that even the dust hanging in the air feels like it's waiting, holding its breath. Like the world knows you're about to say something you can never take back? That was me. Standing in the kitchen. Rain tapping the windows like a heartbeat. My hands gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. And him, standing a few feet away from me. Just watching. Silent. Waiting. I didn't plan to say it. God, I wish I could tell you this was some kind of calculated, manipulative moment. But it wasn't. It was honest. Unfiltered. It was a whisper that felt louder than a scream. I told him to do it. Just like that. And no, I didn't even look him in the eye when I said it, because if I had, I might have backed down. I might have fallen apart. But what got me, what still messes with me even now, is that he didn't even hesitate. Not for a second. Not a question. Not a blink. He just stepped closer. And in that moment, I knew. Everything had already changed. I know how it sounds. Believe me, I do. It's not the kind of thing you just blurt out in a crowded room. It's not the kind of story you casually share over coffee or tell at a dinner party. But here with you, I can be honest. Because if you've clicked on this, you're probably not here by accident. You're here because something in the title stirred something in you. A question. A curiosity. Maybe even a memory you've tried to bury. So let me say this now before we go any further. This isn't a story about being proud. It's a story about being real, about loneliness, desire, and what happens when two people find themselves in the same aching silence and make a choice neither of them can undo. You ready? Because I promise you, once we start, you won't be able to turn away. You're listening to Sheila Hart Tales, where secrets don't stay secrets for long. Subscribe, tap the bell, and join the story that's already changed lives. Because here, every whisper matters. He always lingered when he passed me in the hallway. Never said anything. Never did anything. Just lingered. You know that feeling when someone walks too close? Not in a crowded room, but in a house where there's more than enough space to pass by without touching? But he chose to pass close. So close that his shoulder would brush mine. So close that I'd feel the heat of him before he even made contact. And when his fingers grazed the small of my back, light, casual, like it was nothing, I pretended not to notice. But I did. Every time. I'd hold my breath. Keep my eyes forward. Act like my stomach didn't tighten. Like my skin wasn't tingling. But the truth? I felt it. I wanted it. And I think, so did he. His gaze used to hold mine for just a second too long. Not inappropriate. Not obvious. But enough. Just enough to make my chest feel tight and my thoughts drift. There was this one night. We were in the kitchen. I was wearing a sweater that slipped off my shoulder, and he reached up behind me to grab a glass from the cabinet. He didn't touch me. Not really. But I felt his breath on my skin. Right there, just below my neck. I swear I felt every hair on my body rise like it had been waiting for him. He said nothing. I said nothing. But the silence, it was loud. God, it was loud. Then there was that night on the couch. A movie playing, something forgettable. One of those cold nights where the air outside felt like it could crack your bones. I grabbed the blanket first. He didn't ask. He just slid in beside me, pulling half over his lap, letting his thigh press softly against mine. It was subtle, measured, but I could feel his warmth soaking through the fleece. Could feel the shift in his breath when I leaned forward. Could feel that our bodies had started speaking while our mouths stayed shut. He smelled like cedar and clean laundry. And every time he adjusted himself, I swear it sent a jolt straight through my chest. Not lust. Not quite. It was more delicate than that. More dangerous. Because it wasn't about what we were doing. It was about what we weren't doing. About the space between us that felt tighter and tighter each time we didn't cross it. There were moments I'd find him watching me from the doorway when he thought I couldn't see. Moments when I'd leave a room and feel his eyes stay behind, following my steps. And still, we didn't speak it. We didn't name it. We just kept orbiting each other, closer and closer. Like two sparks trapped in the same breath. Like something ancient and slow-burning was waking up between us. I'd find myself getting dressed with more care. Wearing perfume even if I wasn't going anywhere. Lingering in the kitchen a little longer when I knew he'd be coming down for water. We were playing with fire. And we knew it. But neither of us stepped away. Not once. It was late. The kind of late where the silence feels heavier than sleep. Where the house has settled and the night has tucked itself in, but your thoughts haven't. We were on the couch again. Same blanket. Same distance. But something had changed. You know that feeling when the air shifts between you and someone, and you both feel it, but no one wants to be the first to say it? That was us. I didn't even look at him when I said it. You're quiet. He paused. Just for a beat. And then I heard it, his voice, low and fragile. There is something, he said. Another pause. Like he was weighing each word before he let it fall between us. It's wrong. But it's there. My heart beat so hard I thought he might hear it. But I didn't say anything. Not right away. I let the silence sit with us. Because we both knew what it was. We'd been dancing around it for weeks. Maybe longer. I turned, finally. Looked at him. And what I saw in his eyes, it wasn't lust. It wasn't even desire. It was confusion. Hurt. A kind of ache I recognized too well. I haven't felt like a wife in a long time, I whispered. He didn't move. Just listened. I go to bed alone more nights than I care to count. I make dinner, and he eats in his office. If I wear something nice, he doesn't notice. And when I don't, he doesn't notice that either. I felt the tears build, but held them back. It's not even the absence of love that hurts, I said. It's the absence of being seen. He turned to me then. Fully. Slowly. My dad, your husband, he started, and then stopped himself. Ran a hand through his hair. He's around. But not really here. He checks out. Disappears into work, or meetings, or whatever excuse he's using that week. You think he doesn't see you, but I see you trying. I see everything. I look down at my hands, suddenly unsure of where to put them. He kept going. You laugh less than you used to. You used to hum when you made coffee. You don't do that anymore. And when he walks in the room, you flinch, just a little. That part broke something in me. I didn't think anyone noticed that. I do, he said. I always do. The quiet wrapped around us again. But this time it didn't feel empty. It felt sacred. I feel more seen by you than anyone, I said softly. Then quickly added, and I hate how good that feels. He nodded slowly, his voice barely above a breath. I feel more seen by you than anyone, he echoed. And I hate how good that feels too. We didn't touch. Not then. But something passed between us. Something wordless, fragile, and alive. We both knew the line was still there. But we also knew it wasn't going to hold much longer. And maybe we didn't want it to. I told my son to do it with me. And he didn't even hesitate. Let that sit. But before you jump to what you think you know, he's not really my son. Not by blood. Not by bond. Not by anything other than the title people assigned when I married his father. He was 16 when we met. A lanky, quiet boy with guarded eyes and a chip on his shoulder the size of the whole damn world. I was 28. Still soft around the edges from dreams I hadn't let die yet. Still believing in second chances. His father, my husband, was older. Charming. On the surface, at least. The kind of man who knew how to work a room, but never stayed long in one. He swept me off my feet with promises. But those promises never grew roots. They just faded. So when I moved into their house, it wasn't love that filled the walls. It was silence. Distance. Like we were all pretending to be part of the same picture, but none of us belonged in the frame. He and I, we were strangers. Forced into proximity. Two people linked only by paperwork and polite nods. But life has a way of pressing people together. especially when they're both drowning in the same kind of loneliness. I watched him grow up, not in the maternal sense. I wasn't his mother. Never tried to be. But I saw the way he kept his guard up around his father. I saw the way he shut down when he didn't get a single text on his birthday. I saw him graduate high school with no one in the audience but me. And over time, the silence between us became something else. Something warmer. Something that hummed beneath the surface. By the time he was 22 and I was 39, we weren't strangers anymore. We were survivors of the same emotional abandonment, left behind by the same man. And that creates a bond no one can understand unless they've lived it. You see, people think love always comes in bright, beautiful packages. But sometimes, love is the quiet place you go when no one else has shown up for you. It's the hand that reaches for yours when you've spent too long pretending you're fine. I didn't set out to feel anything for him. I didn't wake up one day and think, I want this. But feelings, they don't ask for permission. They grow in the cracks. In the places where attention, affection, and tenderness have been starved. And yes, I know what this sounds like. Believe me, I've had every ugly thought you're probably thinking right now. But by the time I looked up and saw how he looked at me, it wasn't scandal I saw in his eyes. It was understanding. It was longing. It was that question we all have inside us. Am I wanted? Even here? Even now? And I had that same question burning in my chest. Because when your marriage feels like a tomb, and you've been mourning it while sleeping beside the body, any warmth feels like resurrection. So I told him. I said it. Clear. Soft. Unapologetic. Do it with me? And he didn't ask what I meant. He didn't look away. He didn't even hesitate. Because the truth is, we had already done everything but speak the words out loud. And once they were spoken, there was no turning back. What if I liked it too much? That's the question that kept me awake the night after. Not what we did. Not how it started. Not even what it meant. Just that. What if I liked it too much? Because if I did, then this wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a need. A desire. A choice. And choices come with consequences. I kept playing it back in my head. His eyes steady on mine. The way he didn't flinch. Didn't second guess. Didn't pull away. It should have felt wrong. But what terrified me more was how right it felt. And that scared me. I used to think morality was black and white. You stay loyal. You stay in your lane. You honor vows even when they don't honor you. But when the loneliness starts whispering louder than the voice of reason, you start asking questions you never thought you'd ask. What is loyalty to a man who doesn't even look you in the eyes anymore? What is marriage when it's just a cold bed and empty promises? What is right when all the rules have already failed you? I felt like I was peeling back my own skin, layer by layer, trying to find the woman I used to be. But she wasn't there. In her place was someone braver. Or maybe more broken. I couldn't tell. Was I replacing intimacy with danger? Or was I finally reaching for something real? I stopped singing in the shower. Stopped wearing lipstick. Stopped looking at myself in the mirror longer than a glance. Because every time I did, I saw her. This version of me I didn't recognize. Didn't know if I wanted to keep, but couldn't deny existed. He felt it too. He started pulling away. Not because he didn't want me, but because he could feel the weight of my silence, my distance, my shame wrapped in longing. He'd hover in the doorway of the kitchen like he used to, but he stopped brushing against my back. He'd sit beside me on the couch, close, but not close enough. The air between us grew crowded with unsaid things. One night, I looked at him and said quietly, "I wanted you to stop wanting me." He looked confused, hurt, and I finished it. So I could stop needing you. Because that's what it had become. A need. A craving that lived in my bones. Not for his body, but for the way he saw me. The way he reached me. The way he filled the empty places his father had left behind. I was terrified that if we kept going, I'd lose control. But I was even more terrified that if we stopped, I'd go back to being invisible. And invisibility. That's the real betrayal. I told him to come to me. Not with words, not at first. But with a message only he would understand. I left the door unlocked. Left the hallway light on. Left the weight of hesitation behind me. And I stood still. Not waiting. But ready. If you still want this, I said earlier that day, then come to me. But no more games. I won't run. And I won't pretend anymore. I didn't say it with drama or desperation. Just honesty, because I was done pretending it wasn't real. Done denying what we both felt. Done shrinking myself so I could fit into a life that never loved me back. This wasn't just his fantasy anymore. It was mine, too. I had spent so many years pleasing a man who didn't even notice when I stopped laughing. Years giving my body like a gift he forgot to unwrap. Years making excuses for a love that showed up late, if it showed up at all. But that night, I wanted to be seen. Fully. Not just for my skin. Not just for the curve of my hips, or the way I could make dinner feel like an apology. I wanted to be seen for the woman I was before I forgot her. So I dressed slowly. Not seductively, but with purpose. Each layer was a decision. The soft robe that hugged my waist. The scent of the lavender lotion I hadn't worn in years. The quiet music I let hum through the room. Not for him, but for me. I turned down the sheets like I was inviting peace to sleep beside me. Lit candles, 3, maybe 4, each one like a small permission to feel something again. The room was silent, except for the storm outside. Wind pressing against the window like it wanted to come in and witness what was about to happen. I sat on the edge of the bed, fingers clasped, breath steady, and I waited. Not like a woman waiting to be chosen, but like a woman who had already chosen herself. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to please someone else. I wasn't bending. I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't explaining why I felt too much, needed too much, wanted too much. I just was. And when I heard his footsteps down the hall, slow, deliberate, I didn't flinch, because I knew what it meant. He'd heard me, not just my voice, but the truth beneath it. When he stepped into the room, he paused. I didn't speak. I let the candlelight do the talking. Let the silence hold space for everything words couldn't carry. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Or maybe, like he had always seen me, but finally had permission to look. And in that moment, I wasn't afraid. Because this wasn't about sin. Or shame. Or labels. It was about presence. About truth. About two broken people choosing, in the smallest, quietest way, to be whole, just for a moment. Be home by 8. That's all I said. No promises. No pressure. Just 5 words. Be home by 8. I didn't even say his name. Because if he understood what I meant, he wouldn't need it. No questions, I added, turning to walk away. Just trust me. I don't know who I was in that moment. Maybe someone brave. Maybe someone reckless. Maybe just someone who'd run out of excuses for not listening to her own heart. I spent the afternoon preparing the space like it mattered. Like it was sacred. And in a way it was. Not for what would happen inside those walls, but for what wouldn't. There would be no lies here. No roles to play. No past to protect or future to predict. Just presence. And a choice. I cleaned like it was a ritual. Wiped down every surface. Lit incense I hadn't touched in years. Fluffed pillows with a tenderness that felt like an apology. I even opened the window just a little, so the wind could carry out anything that didn't belong. The light stayed low, just a single lamp beside the bed, casting a golden hush over the room. I picked out the bottle of wine he once said reminded him of rain. Not because I believed in symbolism, but because maybe he'd notice. Maybe he'd remember. I set out 2 glasses. Even though I wasn't sure he'd come. I played music. Nothing dramatic. Just that soft, wordless kind that wraps itself around silence without interrupting it. And then, I waited. And waited. and waited. Every sound outside made my breath catch. Every car door, every footstep, every sigh of the wind. At 7:42, I checked the time. Again at 7:49. By 7:55, I was pacing. Not like a woman anxious for romance, but like someone standing too close to the edge of something she can't unsee. By 8 o'clock, I sat down on the bed. Hands folded in my lap. Back straight. Heart loud. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe I misread everything. Maybe I asked for too much. I told myself it was okay. That I could survive this silence. That I'd lived through worse. But then, at 8:03, the door creaked open. It wasn't dramatic. No rush. No breathless entrance. Just the quiet sound of a decision being made. And then, his shadow stretched into the hallway. Long. Still. Waiting. My breath caught. Because that sound. That tiny, familiar creak of the door. It meant more than 1,000 words ever could. It meant he came. He understood. He chose. And maybe, just maybe, he wanted this too. He stood in the doorway like he didn't know whether to run or kneel. His hand gripped the frame like it was holding him upright. Like walking toward me would take more than courage. It would take surrender. And then, he came to me. Slow. Barely breathing. Like every step was a question he already knew the answer to. He didn't say a word. And neither did I. There was nothing left to explain. No logic to defend. Just presence. He stopped inches from me. Close enough that I could smell the rain in his hair. Feel the warmth rising off his skin. That impossible heat people give off when they're afraid and brave at the same time. My hands trembled at my sides. But I didn't reach for him. I wanted him to decide. To be sure. To claim it without being pulled into it. He looked at me then. Not like a son. Not like a boy. Not even like a man caught in the middle of something forbidden. He looked at me like he saw me. All of me. And then, slowly, he stepped behind me. And I felt the pause in his breath. Just before his fingers reached for the first button. On the back of my dress. He didn't rush. Each button undone with irreverence. Like he was opening a letter he wasn't sure he was allowed to read. The fabric loosened. The air kissed my skin. And, for the first time in years, I didn't feel exposed. I felt offered. I felt chosen. His fingertips brushed my spine, accidental maybe. But it sent a message straight through me. That this wasn't about hunger. Or rebellion. Or the absence of someone else. This was something else. It wasn't lust that burned between us. It was grief. Recognition. A hunger for something gentle. Something real. The kind of touch that says, I know what it feels like to be lonely in a full room. The kind of silence that wraps around two people like an answer they've been waiting to find. I turned to face him. And still, no words. Just breath. Just eyes. Just the trembling understanding that we were no longer on the edge. We were in it. Whatever this was. Whatever it would mean tomorrow. Right now, it was the only truth either of us had. He reached up then. Brushed a piece of hair from my cheek. Like it hurt him to see it in the way. And I leaned in. Not with urgency. Not to rush the moment. But to rest. To finally rest against something. Someone. That didn't demand explanation or apology. Just closeness. His arms slipped around me, careful, like I might break. But I didn't. I melted. Melted into the space I'd been holding empty for years. And in his silence, I heard everything I'd ever wanted to hear. You're not invisible. You're not crazy. You are wanted. He touched me like he was memorizing me. Like every inch of my skin had something to say. And he was finally ready to listen. Not rushed. Not greedy. Just there. His hands moved as if they were learning. And maybe they were. Not just my body, but the story it held. All the pieces of me I had never let anyone get close enough to see. I hadn't realized I was crying. Until he caught a tear with his thumb. And whispered, You're not just beautiful. You're the only thing that's ever made sense. And that broke something in me. Not in a painful way, but like a dam that had held back every ache, every silent need I'd buried, just to survive being unloved for so long. I cried, not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't know love could feel like this. Quiet, patient, whole. He didn't look at me like a conquest. He looked at me like an answer to a question we'd both been too scared to ask out loud. When our bodies finally met, it wasn't about rebellion. It wasn't about betrayal. It was about recognition. Like the space between us was always meant to close. Like his skin knew mine long before we touched. We didn't speak. Our language was weightless breaths, and the soft way his lips found the place just below my collarbone. Like he was kissing a wound only he could see. And I let him. For the first time in my life, I let someone love me without hiding the cracked pieces, because he didn't try to fix them. He just stayed. He moved slowly, with the kind of control that made every second feel like an hour. He was careful, but not hesitant. There was no confusion, no shame, no apology, just intention. Every time his fingers brushed my skin, it felt like he was saying, "I choose you." Still, even knowing everything, the thunder outside matched the storm in my chest. But inside that room, everything was still. Still and holy. We moved together like two people who finally understood why nothing else ever fit. Why every other touch felt like settling. I traced the shape of his shoulder, felt the tension he carried, and whispered, "You don't have to hold back." He nodded, eyes full, mouth trembling. And when he finally gave in, not to lust, but to trust, I felt it, not in my body, but in my soul, the kind of joining that didn't just feel physical. It felt like confession, like communion, like two secrets finally speaking the same language. We didn't need to say we loved each other. It was there, in every breath, in every pause, in the way we held each other when it was over. Like we were afraid the world might come crashing back too soon. But in that moment, there was only us. No titles, no rules, no past. Just the kind of closeness that says, you were never too much. You were just waiting for the right person to hold it all. He didn't leave after. He held me, not like a guilty secret, but like I was the only thing keeping him grounded in a world that made no sense. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. The silence said everything. No promises. No regrets. Just presence. In the dark, the steady rhythm of his breath matched mine. And for once, I didn't feel alone. When the first light touched the room, I finally broke the quiet. "I'm not ashamed," I whispered. He looked at me then. Really looked. Like he carried a truth he couldn't put into words. "I'd do it again," he said softly. Every time. And I believed him. Because it wasn't about mistakes. Or wrong turns. It was about finding a place to be seen. To be known. We both knew the world might never understand. Maybe never forgive. But in that moment, that didn't matter. We had each other. In all our messy, complicated, beautiful imperfection. Days later, I walked away from my loveless marriage. Not because I was running to him, but because I was finally running to myself. To the woman who deserved to be chosen. Not as a secret, but as a truth. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if he and I will ever be more than this moment we shared. But I do know this. For the first time in a long time, I'm free. Free to want. Free to feel. Free to be seen. Sometimes what feels forbidden. It's not about right or wrong. Not about rules we're told to follow. It's about honesty. Honesty with ourselves. About claiming what we were told we couldn't have. Or worse, weren't allowed to want. Love doesn't come with a rulebook. It doesn't fit neatly into boxes or categories. Sometimes it's messy, complicated, shameful to others, but real to us. And isn't that what matters? To be real. To be seen. Have you ever loved someone the world told you shouldn't? Someone who made you question everything you thought you knew? Would you do it again? If it meant finally being seen? If it meant being held not just for what you show, but for every broken, beautiful part you hide? You're not alone. If this story stirred something inside you, if it made your heart ache or your breath catch, that's because it found a piece of you. A piece you've been holding back, maybe for years. Here in Sheila Hart Tales, those pieces come together. Whispered secrets shared in the dark. Stories that don't judge but understand. So, if you're ready, subscribe, tap the bell, join the community where no secret stays hidden for long. Leave a comment. You don't have to say everything, just enough to be heard. Because sometimes, that's all we need.